Hi, this is Darlene from Digital Photo Mentor. You may recognize the image on the screen behind me if you watched the previous video as I walked through McFun's new Luminar image processing software. In that video, I covered the standalone version, so that's the one you would use if you currently are not using Photoshop or another imaging processing software. If you are using Lightroom, keep watching this video as I'm going to show you how I use Luminar as a plugin for Lightroom to take my images to the next level. Be right back. Welcome back. Okay, as I mentioned in the previous video, I went through McFun's Luminar software as the standalone version and I processed a couple of images. I've pulled those into Lightroom as well, just so you can see a before and a after and see what the difference is between how I processed them in Lightroom and what I did to take them further in Luminar. So this was the first one. This is the original image right out of camera. There's no processing here. I can show you my Lightroom sliders if you don't believe me. So there's nothing there. Then the second version, next one, is processed in Lightroom only. So you can see that I've made some adjustments to my sliders here on the right hand side. And of course it looks much better. I've pulled down the highlights, we've got detail in the sky. The third version is the Luminar version. You can see that it's taken it a little bit further. The image is much punchier and it's got a lot of detail and contrast in localized areas. Like the trees have incredible detail and contrast that the other image does not. So let me zoom in on that one for you. Okay, so to see the trees kind of don't have the same definition. The reflection doesn't have the same kind of punch. Okay, here's the Luminar version. Okay. The second image that I processed in the other video was this lovely lady from Cuba, and we did a black and white version. So this is the original again, out of camera, processed in Lightroom only, processed with Luminar. So I taken the image from Lightroom into Luminar and processed it even further. The biggest difference is that you'll notice on her face. So I've added a fair bit of clarity in Lightroom 36. And you can see, there's lots of detail in her hand and there's some good contrast, but her face is looking sort of not as sharp as it could be. In the Luminar version, look at how much more texture there is in her hand and in her face and also her hair, as well as picking up that smoke. You can almost count every hair on her head. So where Luminar picks up, where Lightroom I think leaves off, is the enhancement of details. And in Luminar, you're able to adjust them independently. So large details, medium details, and small details, whereas in Lightroom, you don't have that ability. So I'll show you a couple more examples that I processed already. This is the original. This is my Lightroom version, which I was quite happy with before Luminar came along. So in a way, I'm kind of unhappy with Luminar right now because it's making me rethink processing some of my images. I'm not going to go crazy and go back and do them all again because I don't have that kind of time. But it is making me rethink about how I process my images and what I can actually do to them that I couldn't do before. So here's the version that was processed in Luminar. Let's go back. This is the Lightroom version, which I turned into black and white. And this is the Luminar version, which I turned mostly black and white, but I left some of the color. And I really like this rendition. It has a lot more contrast and feel to me than does the Lightroom only version. Let's look at another example, street photography. This is another really great one for pulling into Luminar because street photography to me really works well with a grunge type of look with a lot of contrast. And this was my version processed in Lightroom. This is what I did in Luminar. And literally, I added one preset, clicked a couple of tweaks on it, and this is what I got. And I absolutely love this rendition. Next one, another street photograph, lots of contrast. Look at the light and the shadows on the street here, the shadow going behind the girl running down the street. Okay. So I processed it in Lightroom to make sure that it had lots of blacks and was really dramatic, and I was very happy with this version. Then I thought, well, I'll just pull it into Luminar, let's see what I can do. and took it even further. So it's really dramatic, has lots of detail and crunch, lots of blacks, and I absolutely love this version as well. So which is best? There isn't really no best. It has come down to your preferences. Okay, so if you're happy with something a little bit more subtle, then perhaps you don't need to go over to Luminar. But if you want to see what the potential is of your images, let's go a step further again. Okay, one more example, original camera raw file, processed in Lightroom, and I did in this case pull some of the sliders down and bring the saturation down a little bit, but I don't have the same flexibility in terms of I could paint desaturation, but then I sort of lose the effect of being able to have the color sliders available in the desaturation mode. So this is the version that I made in Lightroom with a slight desaturation to give it kind of that antique look. Okay? Obviously, I mean, this is Cuba, in case you didn't recognize it. And this is what came out of Luminar. I love this version. It has a lot more feel to it, a lot more depth with the deep blacks, and I love the fact that I can control every aspect of it, including adding a glow on the background to make it look less sharp and less contrasty. Okay. Another example of adding grunge, lots of Cuba images, because if you've ever been to Cuba, there's a lot of texture in Cuba, right? So Luminar really works to bring out the texture. This is my Lightroom version, and this is the Luminar version. So if we take a look at the wall, I'll just zoom in here a little bit. You can see what Lightroom has done. Now the focus here on the image is focused on the guy, or maybe not. Maybe it's blurry entirely, and I didn't focus very well at all. That's possible too. But the Luminar version has a lot more detail in this wall. It just looks a lot more crunchy and grungy and granular, what I would expect from an image of Cuba. Right? So to me, this really fits the subject matter. Yet another one, this is Havana, raw file, processed in Lightroom, and this is it's done a really good job. You know, if I look at the before and after, of course, we're doing lots of great things to the sky here, but can you do better? Okay, is it better? That's up to you. I like both versions. This one has a very different feel. It's darker, it's moodier, it's a bit bluer. Okay, and I could probably tweak the Luminar version, this one, to be fairly similar in color, but I like this bluer tone. It's coming into blue hour, and I really enjoy the look that's happening here. Okay. Now I'm going to come back to this one because I'm going to process this one live for you, and I haven't done this yet in Luminar, so let's see what we can do with this guy. Okay. This is a fellow in Morocco. We met in the Casbah. This is not quite original out of camera. Let's see what it looks like original out of camera. That's original out of camera. I do apply a little bit of a vignette and some presets when I import, so it's applied the whites, blacks, clarity, and a vignette. Okay, so that's what it looks like with basic Lightroom processing, and that's the version that I came up with through Luminar. So I'm going to show you how you can do an edge like this, a texture screen to enhance texture or add texture to your images, and come up with an effect like this without using Photoshop. Okay, are you excited? I am. So let's go back to our Moroccan fellow. He was working in the square in, oh my goodness, where was this? Fez. Okay, so he's a silver worker or a metal worker in Fez, and he posed for our group as we were coming through. Okay, so to open this guy in Luminar, it works the same as if you're opening it to Photoshop. You just right click, choose Edit In from the menu, and Luminar. Okay, as long as you've got Luminar installed on your computer and your programs or your apps, it should show up here as a plugin for you. Okay, so it's going to ask me, I want to edit a copy. Yes, and you can set the parameters of how it does, just like you would for Photoshop, what file format, what color space, and so on. So, and it also works the same way as any other plugin that you use for Lightroom, in that you do your editing in Luminar, save it or apply it in this case, and once you go back to Lightroom, the new image will be there for you to use. Okay, so I'm going to do a really quick walkthrough of this screen. If you watched the previous video where I showed the standalone version, you would already have seen this, so you might want to skip forward a little bit. Otherwise, I'll just give you a really quick overview here. So the main Luminar window, of course, you see your image, you see the zoom buttons at the top here, you've got preview tools, you've got history, an undo tool, and you can turn off any of the panels or turn them on. Okay, so histogram, layers, turn off your presets at the bottom, or turn off the panels. Okay, anything that you see that's orange inside of Luminar means that it's activated. So if I activate the brush, it becomes orange. If I activate the hand, it becomes orange. Okay, if it's not orange, it's not active. So inside of Luminar, how it works is very similar to Lightroom in many ways and very similar to Photoshop in many ways. Okay? Lightroom uses presets, Luminar uses presets. Okay? Photoshop offers layers, which allows you to do non-destructive editing, as does Luminar. Okay? So I could apply any of the presets, which are just a series of filters applying to the image, to this base layer, or I could add a new layer and apply it there. Okay, so the same advantages of using layers in Photoshop works here too. So I'm going to click the plus symbol right here to add a new adjustment layer, and the filter panel swings out on the inside of Luminar. Instead of the panels that you're used to in Lightroom on the right hand side, I guess it would be right hand side if you're looking at me. Instead of the panels, which go down the side of Lightroom, inside of Luminar you have filters, okay? So they're kind of similar. They have different things that you can adjust. So you can apply them one at a time. You can put one on each layer. You can put several on a layer, or you could choose one of the presets, okay? I've predetermined that I like this one, so I'm going to start with the Dramatic Grungy preset, which is in the Dramatic set. So Luminar comes with a series of a bunch of presets, and you can download more from their website just by clicking this button. Okay, really easy to install as well. Just double click the download and it will install them for you. Okay, I'm going to rename this layer with the filter name, or the preset name, so I know what it is that I've applied in case I apply some other layers and I forget. Okay, so as expected, it's applied a look to my image, and right out of the gate, this one is pretty darn good. Right? You can tweak the sliders of any of them, so it's applying 3 different filters here. You can see dramatic, it's called dramatic, clarity, and structure. You can see what each of them do. Again, orange means it's active, so click the orange button to turn off that particular filter. Okay, structure. And you can adjust any of the sliders within any of those filters. Okay, so the brightness has been turned down here, saturation has been turned down. I like the look of what's happening here. If you wanted to change any of them, you could. I'm happy with it. Okay. The other thing that you can do is apply a mask to allow it to show only bits of this effect. Okay, so when I turn this layer off and on, I can see how it's applying to the whole image. Right, I have the ability to lower the opacity, just like in Photoshop. Okay, so there's an opacity slider right up here. Okay, so I can do that and just make it more subtle. Or I have the ability to add a mask. Okay, so with this here, I can add a mask this way. Okay, or I can do it much simpler. Right? Inside of Luminar, what they've done is they've set up these tools to mask with a brush or a gradient filter or a radiant filter, and when you apply it to your image, the defaults are that it sets a size and softness and opacity for you, but it defaults to clear mask, meaning that the bottom image below, which is unaffected by this preset or this filter, is going to show through. Okay, so when I click on this image, it's going to show me the original image except for the one spot where I've then clicked. Okay, so the effect's going to disappear. I'm just going to do a quick little circle right there. Okay, so see how it's only applied in that area, and we see a spot on my mask where it is now allowing this filter to apply. So I can just keep painting. I can make the brush larger with the plus sign. The bracket key, right? And I can just paint. Now notice I'm kind of avoiding him, so I wanna add it to him, but I don't want it so much on his face, right? Just like that. So maybe a little more. So you get to decide. I'm doing a really quick and dirty version here so that I can just show you the demonstration. If I'm going to process this image for myself, I'm going to take a little more time. I'm probably going to zoom in and so on. Okay, so quick before and after of that. You can also do a before and after with the eyeball up here by clicking and holding it, or the keyboard shortcut \, which you might recognize or remember from Lightroom if you use that one, or you can use the slider tool. Okay, so let's see what else we can do. So that looks pretty nice. We can add another layer. Again, our filters overlay pops out. This time I'm going to add the Accent AI filter. I'm going to do some highlights and shadows just to recover his shirt a little bit, I think, and maybe some details enhancer. So details enhancer was that one that I was showing you with the other example images earlier that really brought out the trees in the landscape image. Okay, so I might bring out some more details in here. So this AI filter is kind of like an HDR filter. It pulls up your shadows a lot. Be really careful with going too far with it. I kind of don't really want to do too much on here because I like the deep dark shadows, so I might just apply it really subtly here. The highlights. Okay, I've noticed that his shirt looks a little bright, so let's see what happens if we pull that down. Yes, that is working on his shirt. Like anything, I tend to go to extremes. I will pull it both directions to 100% to see what it does. Okay. Detail enhancer. This is the magic right here. Okay, so let's pull up the medium details. And maybe let's pull down the dark detail or large details. So anything that's large, it's actually going to smooth it out a little bit. Let's protect our highlights and see what that's doing. Okay, so we can turn that filter off with the little orange dot. And that's doing some nice things as well. And let's see what this is doing. I decided I don't actually like this one, so let's delete it. Okay, you can delete any of the filters by just opening the menu and deleting it right from there. Okay, so this has done a really nice job, and it's taken it farther than you could do in Lightroom. If you want to add another filter, maybe you want to add a special effect, you can keep going until the cows come home and have as many layers as you want. Okay, so I'm going to hit apply, and it's going to save the image like you see it on the screen and bring us back into Lightroom. Okay, so I'm going to hop back over to Lightroom and let it do its job there. And now we've got the new image. Okay, so here's the Lightroom version, and there's the Luminar version. Processed, extra grungy, really nice. So I wanted to show you a couple of more examples that I did in Lightroom versus Luminar. Okay, this is a lovely lady making some roasted coffee on a coffee farm in Nicaragua, and I did this one in Lightroom. Okay, so you can see sort of the before and after. So that's what the original image looks like. So I did quite a lot to it in Lightroom to bring the focus down to her, and I was really happy with it. But here's an interesting thing that's actually happened to me is my Fuji X-T1 allows me to make a JPEG, and using the Wi-Fi in the camera, I can pull the JPEG into my phone using the Fuji app. And then I could process it in Snapseed and save it on Instagram or Facebook and so on while I'm traveling. So it's really handy. And I actually processed this image in Snapseed, and I liked it better. But I was trying to replicate the look that I got in Snapseed, and I couldn't with Lightroom. So I took it over to Luminar, and I was able to get really close. So if you've watched my Instagram feed, you've probably seen this image. This is the Luminar version. The one that you see on Instagram is the Snapseed version processed with my phone. Obviously, this is going to be much higher quality. Okay? Luminar works great for night images. Again, before, this is London, blue hour, far processed in Lightroom. Okay? The original image looks like that, kind of blah. I punched it up in Lightroom. Looks pretty good, right? Wait for it. Okay, this is the Luminar version. And I really think that the word Luminar and the name of the program really comes to play here, because look at how luminous this image looks. It looks like it has a glow to it. The sky is glowing, the walkway is glowing, and there's just so much more detail and control in this image than I had with the Lightroom image. And I could probably get it close if I worked at it a lot, but this was really easy in Luminar. I'm not kidding, guys. It's super easy. Okay. This is our tour leader, Daniel, on his camel this year. He's leading the Moroccan tour next year. So this is what I processed in Lightroom of Daniel doing a little quick selfie on a camel in the middle of the Sahara Desert as they're about to head out. And this is the Luminar version. And I'm going to go back and zoom in on the camel a bit because this is where the details enhancer and the structure really came into play. Is look at the fur on this fellow's face. This is the Lightroom version. And this is the Luminar version. Okay. Now granted, I could pull my clarity way up and get something kind of similar, but it doesn't give me the same look, and his fur's kind of added a lot of black to it. Right. I actually really much prefer the detail here in the Luminar version. It's incredible the amount of detail. I could count this fellow's eyelashes. All right. And I added kind of a misty vignette to make it look foggy on the edges to keep the focus on the camel and the detail in the fur. Okay, so I could actually keep going on, but I think that you're getting the idea that I'm really impressed with Luminar, and that there are things that Luminar can do that Lightroom cannot, including working with layers and the things like detail enhancers and softening modes. I didn't get into the one with the border and the textures. I'm going to save that for another video, so sorry about teasing you on that one. I actually made this one with Luminar's tonality plugin. So if you have that one, give it a try and see what you can come up with. So what I recommend is if you already have Lightroom and you're happy with it, keep doing that. If you feel like you want to experiment a bit more and you've tried other plugins and you haven't really been happy with them, give Luminar a try. I think that you might be really surprised in a pleasant way in terms of what you can do with it, how easy it is to use, and how flexible. They have a free trial available on the website. I'll put a link below the video. Check it out and see what you think. Let me know if you give it a try. Please share your images in the comments below. I'd love to see what you come up with as well. So until next time, keep playing, keep processing, keep shooting, and we'll see you soon. Take care.